All about tracking, reviewing, and reporting on actual versus expected progress. Highlight that. That's what this this process is about. All right, tracking, reviewing, and reporting on actual versus expected progress. So we want to look at the effectiveness of our activities. So not just the risk responses, but everything, our procurements. How's everything looking? And then we're going to provide some forecasts and identify any risk and opportunities. So the key outputs we're going to look at here are going to be the work performance reports. We'll potentially get change requests, and we'll update documents and plans. So notice here we take any component of the plan, almost all documents. We'll look at work performance information and what that is, the agreements themselves or contracts, EFs, no PAs, and some of the same tools and techniques that we've seen, right? Expert judgment, data analysis, now in alternatives, cost benefit or earned value, root cause analysis, trend analysis. So we'll look at these, and then the outputs work performance report would be the specific one here. And then the next three are potential. So work performance reports give you sort of a forecast in a summarized version, and it also gives you ideas about how the project health is happening, and you distribute that out as a project communications. By the way, a work performance report doesn't get sent out to anybody, a project communications does. So just a little nuance in language for PMI. So status, graphs, forecasts, charts, designed to keep stakeholders aware and generate decisions or actions. It's all we're really doing in this process. We may get some requests for change. Maybe modify some baselines, right? But not a whole. It's potential. This could happen. Likely it will, but you just don't know when it's going to happen. But so these are always potential change requests, updates to documents and plans. Now the work performance information that we'll take into account. So let me go back. Let me go back a couple slides. I'm going to go back to this slide here. Okay. With the exception of monitoring control project work, the one we're looking at now, from 4.6, perform integrated change control, all the way to monitor stakeholder engagement. All of those processes take work performance data. That was the output of director managed project work. They take work performance data as an input, and it give you work performance information as an output. Okay, all of these processes, data in, information out, data in, information out. So we see here from perform integrated change control all the way down to monitor stakeholder engagement. All of the outputs of these processes, the work performance information that we get from each of these becomes an input to monitor and control project work. And then the output of this process is a work performance report. So I just wanted to show you that all of these processes from 4.6 down feed into this one process. And then the output of that is the actual report. And so we see that there. We see work performance information in, work performance report as an output. And I think this process is a good overall example of the PMI way. We have inputs where we use tools and techniques to create outputs. Basically, we're going to take this work performance information that we've gotten and all the agreements, the contracts, EFs, OPAs, documents, and plans. We're going to use alternatives analysis, decision-making, data analysis, or expert judgment, and meet with people to turn all of those documents into a report. And if necessary, request change, update our approach, and update other documents. That's the same process over and over and over for almost all of these. Take inputs, use tools and techniques, make outputs. So work performance report summarizes all this. Designed to keep stakeholders aware. We may get requests for change, updates. All right, we've seen this. Okay. We'll take some project plans and documents as well. And then the analysis that we'll use, we're going to do earned value management when we get to control cost. All right, so earned value analysis can help you with providing a forecast or explanations to what's happened or what's happening and allow you to make some decisions. Trend analysis, don't overthink that. What's the line doing? Is it going up or down? All right, don't overthink that one. Variance analysis, the difference between what you plan to be, where you plan to be, how much you plan to spend versus where you actually are in terms of progress or how much money you've spent in the budget. All right, so that's all that is. It's a fraction, it's a percentage. Don't overthink that one either. And then root cause analysis. What are the reasons for the issues that have come up that have caused us to not meet our particular budget at this moment or meet our particular schedule? Whatever it may be. It could be quality performance. What's the root cause? And then there's alternative and cost benefit analysis, right? Well, what's the best method to go? You know, should we, I used the example earlier of building condos off the coast of Florida, and it's like, okay, we could have sandbags out and we should board up the windows. Maybe next time an alternative is we'll put storm, do they call those storm gates? I don't know. We don't have those in California, but I'm imagining. I don't know. Do they have those where you guys live? Is it like a little shutter, a storm shutter? What do they call it?
Yeah, I think you got it.
Storm shutter. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah. I mean, that will be the idea here. So when you see I'm giving you these examples because this is what the exam is going to do. They're going to describe these scenarios. They're going to describe the fact that, they're going to talk about risk and make you think it's a risk question, but it won't be. It'll be a monitor and control project work. Here's an example. You're a project manager for XYZ company, and your project is to build condos off the coast of Florida. You have noted in your risk management plan how to handle weather-related type of risk. And you qualify that the hurricane was likely to happen and it was going to be extremely impactful. And you quantify the fact it was going to cost the company $4 million. Your risk response was to board up the windows and place sandbags and send all of the workers home. Right. And it'll say after the risk event took place, you went back and you reevaluated the risk and determined that you ought to use storm shutters instead of boarding up the windows. This is an example of, it'll say A, alternatives analysis, all right, B, risk mitigation, C, risk analysis, D, change request. You'll get some question like that where we talked about risk, but it turned around, it was an example of alternatives analysis. So that's monitoring and controlling, all right? That process is all about variance analysis. And then the whole goal is to get a report that talks about it. Now, in conjunction with that, we want to integrate any changes. Any changes that happen, update all your documents, let everybody know what we're doing, and then let's move forward with that new plan. And if we're gonna have a new plan, then you need to have some type of document that says, if you make this change, what is it gonna do to the scope, schedule, budget, and allow folks to vote on it. That's what this process is, integrated change control. Okay. So change requests are generated by multiple processes throughout a project's life. And we all know that. We can get change for everything. So the question is when do you actually have to go through change control for PMI? And the answer is going to be anything that changes a baseline, anything that causes you to spend more money, to take longer, or deviate from the scope baseline. Scope statement, WBS dictionary. You deviate from that, even if you don't get a cost increase, but if you're deviating from that, then you must go through change request to allow, the sponsor to make a decision. All right, so for the exam, just remember that. Scope, schedule, cost baseline, any three of those need to be changed, then you're gonna need to go through change control. Okay. So key outputs here will be approved change requests. That's the whole goal, right? So not just change requests, but approved change requests. Those that are not approved they'll sort of die in a change log, right? So that's a document update. They'll just say, nope, change is denied, right? If it gets approved, then there's an actual approved output there. And then we may update our approach. We'll get there by taking the plan, taking the work performance reports, any change request, EFs and OPAs, and then we'll use expert judgment, some tools. We'll analyze the data. We'll make decisions. We might need to do that. And so let's take a look. Outputs here, approved change request. and feed instructions back into the project. Let me go back a slide. This approves change request. If you remember when we did direct and manage project work, there is an input to that process, very beginning of execution, called approve change request. So that's the idea here. I'll show you a picture that gives you the flow of deliverables throughout the lifecycle of a project and how approve change requests become an input right at the end of this process. But here's the idea is those go back into the project and you got to update your document, right? There's some efforts to do that. And then you need to make sure that all of the team members know what we're doing. And then if they're rejected or deferred, meaning, well, we're not going to do it just now, then that's communicated back. So we would update some sort of log, the change log in this sense. So approved change requests are implemented. You see that's underlined there by direct and manage project work. Just remember that becomes an input to that process. Right. Now, in order to do this, we need the change request. Right, and that can come from many scenarios within the project. We're going to deep dive into it in a second. We'll look at our plans and our documents for areas of change. There could be a range of factors: government, legal restrictions, things that change within a contract. Right, if you're performing services or supplying goods to a customer, their rules and regulations become an EEF to you. Out of your control, you got to operate under it, right? So we see contracting constraints come up here because that's, and that's where the EEF lies in there. As far as the OPAs, could just be the procedures and policies that your company has in place to get this done. For many companies, a PM can just, may be able to deny changes, but probably needs someone else to approve the changes. In some scenarios, a simple email will do. In other scenarios, you got to have a very formal change control board. When we talk about, data analysis, this is the idea that any change that takes place, you need to evaluate the scope, schedule, budget, and you need to provide that information to the CCB so that they can approve that change. So let me look at the slides here. I'm going to write this out. Let's see, there's a good spot. I think here. All right. So PMI has some steps. Let's see, I'm on Keynote. You're going to write this down. These are the 8 steps to the change control process. And they're in the PMBOK, but it will be good if you add them in to your slides here so you can study. So whoops. Come back here. Let me finish the slides and then I'm going to show you. I'm going to write down the 8 steps and I'm going to show you a picture. So we got alternatives and cost benefits. We talked about decision making. Well, let's talk about it now. So after you give what's going to happen to the scope, schedule, budget, then there would be some sort of vote. Right, and it could be one person or multi-criteria or whatever, but there'd be some sort of vote and folks would say yes or no. And now, once you make that change, there's still configuration control. So highlight configuration control for me. Configuration control is the idea that now that you've made a change, how do we know the difference between this plan and the last plan? And ask yourself this question throughout your career in project management or just your professional career. How many times have you been working on different documents, but they have the same file name? You and a team member, or the same document, right, with different file names. Like it happens all the time. So this is the easiest way to think of what configuration control is. It would be like the idea that some of you, after you save a document, it says, okay, scope statement, maybe you go year, month, date, 2019, 0223, V1, V2, V3. Some of you might do V.1, V.2, V.3. Some of it might be A, B, or C. Or sometimes there might not even be a version. So whatever your file naming schema, that's what configuration control would be. This would be how we know the difference between iPhone S and 6S and 6, or 7S and 7, because we have this documentation. So configuration control is going to focus on that. You're going to get questions on the exam that describe the fact that a change is taking place, and now you're updating documents. The configuration management plan will help you with that. And you could have some tool like SharePoint. When you update a document, right, it knows who checked it out and what the last version is, and you can roll back if you need to. That will be a configuration control tool. So that's going to come up on the exam. Just want to mention that. Okay, so let's get to the 8 steps. Let me get my, oh, where's my nice little pen? I was going to have to do this with my finger. So step 1 from PMI. That's not working. Finger, oh, it does work, but that's not working. All right, I have to use my finger. We'll try one more time. I can't leave my door open. Oh, here it goes. All right, so first thing we have to do is prevent the change. You want to write these steps down. Prevent change. And oh gosh, it's not even writing well. Prevent change. Okay, step 2. If you can't prevent the change, then you need to identify the root cause. Identify root cause, or do some sort of root cause analysis. Okay, that's analysis. Okay. Step 3, document the impacts. All right, step 3, you need to document the impacts. For PMI, the impact is going to be what's going to happen to the scope, schedule, budget, or risk. Many times on the exam, they'll give you 2. You only need 1. One of those 4, and now you know that we've documented the impact. 4th thing you need to do, issue the change request. Issue the change request. So note that when someone on your team comes to you with a change, that's not a change request. They're coming to you what they believe to be as a change. Your first thing is to prevent it. And you could do the 5 whys. Well, why should we change? Well, what's going on? This and that. Now that you find that out, probably you did root cause analysis, you identify what that is. Then you say, okay, well, if we do make this change, it's going to add so much to the schedule, the budget, or it's going to do this to the scope. Okay. Now that we know what those impacts are, now we're going to issue that request along with the analysis to the CCB. That is that if I go back on a couple slides, right, that's the idea that we're doing this data analysis. We have the alternative and the cost benefit analysis. We want to identify what the total impact is going to be, right? We want to identify what the total impact is going to be there. And from there, now the CCB can make a decision, right? So coming back. So now that we've issued the request, then our next step is to get CCB approval. Or I could put a / perform integrated change control. All right. So now it's literally do this process. Go hold a meeting, whatever it may be, Wednesdays, Thursdays at 4, where you get your key stakeholders or your steering committee and provide this information to them and get their yay or nay. Okay. Now that you've gotten approval, step 6 says, update your documentation. And update your docs. Step 7. Now that you've updated your docs, now you want to go get buy-in from the team. And I know that sounds backwards. It's like, well, what do you mean you've made a change and now you got to go back to the team? Like, well, in some scenarios, the customer or is the key stakeholder or the sponsor, if you will. And there may be a set of key stakeholders that the sponsor may designate as like their team or a steering committee. And those are the folks who will actually make the determination of if we're going to approve this change or not. And now that they've said yes, the first thing, update your documents, because heaven forbid, we get hit by a bus or we quit or something like that. Well, then the project can still go on. After we've updated those documents, now we need to go back to the team and say, okay, team, this is what the steering committee chose, and here's what we got to do moving forward. So, all right, so now you got to go and get buy-in. Update team, get buy-in. Sorry, it's looking a little ugly. So get stakeholder buy-in. And then your last step, step 8, now direct and manage the team according to the new plan. Direct and manage team according to new plan. I don't have space, but. So let me just recap, because these are the 8 steps that you must memorize for the exam. Okay. First step, prevent the change. Second step, identify the root cause. Third step, document the impact, right? Perform some analysis. That might be the other word PMI will say it, perform analysis, analyze the impacts or document the impacts. Step 4, issue the change request. Step 5, perform integrated change control or get CCB approval. Step 6, update your documentation. Step 7, get stakeholder buy-in. Step 8, direct and manage your team according to the new plan. So you will get a ton of questions about change on the exam. Remember, we have 31% of the exam is in executing, and then 29% is in monitoring and controlling. So you're going to get a lot of questions, right? You have 58 questions that potentially could all be on change or all be on earned value management. You don't know what kind of exam you're going to get, right? But 58 potential questions. The way the questions are going to be set up is they're going to expect you to know which one of these steps you're at. And then they're going to say, what should the project manager do next? Most of the questions on the exam are set up as, what should the project manager do next? So in this sense, you need to understand, well, have I documented the impacts? Have I issued the request? Have I gotten approval? So the questions look something like this. You're project manager for XYZ company. Susan, senior engineer, comes to you with what she believes to be is a major change. She notes that it's going to take 2 additional weeks in the schedule, but there will be no further impacts to the budget, and that all quality tests assume that they will be able to achieve the budget within specs. What should the project manager do next? So based on that, where are you? What number are you at? Are you preventing the change? Are you doing root cause? Have you documented the impacts? Are you issuing a request? What should you do here?
I think you issue the request. If we know that it's going to have a 2-week impact on budget, you've done that analysis already.
Perfect.
Okay, question. Why is it there, not at the prevent change? Because you're just learning of it from the engineer.
Okay, I was waiting for that question. Good question, Maggie.
Good question.
So 2 things. I'm gonna address, Ryan, what you said is correct. So from PMI standpoint, in the question, in the paragraph, it told you that the change was going to take so much longer or cost so much, right? And you only need one of the 4. Cost more, take longer, add to the scope, or increase risk. Usually the exam gives you 2. But as long as one of the 4 is there, that means the impact has been documented or the impact has been analyzed. Now you can issue the request. So Maggie, to your question specifically, it's that because it's a standardized exam, we take everything at face value, meaning that in real life, if somebody comes to me and is like, yeah, this change is going to take 2 weeks. Well, it really depends on who's coming to me. If I'm going to believe your 2 weeks or if I need to do some additional work, right? It just depends. But for the exam, if it says that somebody has come to you and they've given you information, we take it that that's true, right? You're in a strong matrix environment, year-long project, 200 resources, $10 million budget, and you're an assertive project manager. PMI says that's the standard piece there, right? And so within these assumptions that you all need to make while you're taking the exam, the other assumptions are is that adequate documentation exists, change controls in place. Management is working with you instead of against you. Everything is there. Like, this is a perfect project scenario. So in this sense, Maggie, the idea is that in the question, somebody came to you what they believe to be as a major change. They've noted what the impacts are. So now it's your job to go and issue the request and tell the CCB, we need to make a change. It's going to take 2 more weeks. It's not going to cost any more money. Are you good with this? All right. So that's the idea. The other way that they'll do it is they'll say, she's come to you with what she believes to be as a major change. You guys have a quick discussion, and it is believed that it could possibly cost 10% more and take 15% longer. You and the team are deciding how you want to develop this information and communicate to the sponsors. What should the project manager do next?
Well, so in that scenario, I feel like you'd be in either 1, prevent the change, or 2, the root cause analysis of why.
Okay, close. In this one, in that question, the impact was never documented. I used the word we believed. They believe, and then I didn't put a specific. I said up to 10%, and 20% is believed, but further analysis needs to take place. Now I know you're not able to read it. I read it. Yeah. I just did it as a one-off. But that's the idea. Is like your questions usually are somewhere between 3, 4, and 5. Right, 3, 4, and 5. It's usually the impacts need to be analyzed and documented, or you need to issue the request, or it'll straight up say you've just issued a change request. What should the project manager do next? And then, okay, if you've issued the change request, go get approval. All right. So, Maggie, where you'll see 1 and 2 is rather than saying what should the project manager do next, it'll describe one of the scenarios I described, and it'll say, what's the first thing project manager should look to do when dealing with change? Right, and it'll say try and prevent the change. Right, so in that case, regardless of the scenario they give, the answer would be the same. Or they'll say once you've identified that you couldn't prevent the change, what's the next step for the project manager? In that case, identify the root cause. Because if you can't figure out what the cause of it is, then you're not going to be able to figure out what the impacts are when you change those things. All right, so that's the idea from PMI. All right, so everybody got these 8 steps? Know these 8 steps. You're going to have to, and know them in order. All right, I forget exactly which page in the PMBOK it is. I'll look it up and get it to you guys. Let me make a note of that. Change control page. But I've given you the 8 steps, but still you'll see it with the official PMI language, what the 8 steps are. And then you need to know these, memorize them, and know that, just remember that when someone comes to you, it's not a change request. You as a PM issue the change request.